It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
I want somebody who's passionate. I want somebody who can talk to people like a real person, who can make people feel things, who can make people want to follow them.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey there. Happy President's Day. Do you have the day off? I hope so. Management at WCPT does, but Paul Shivari, Joan Esposito, Andy Miles, those of us who do the actual work, we are still here. In the coal mines of radio. So, Paul, did you think that you were going to get today off?
Not at all. No,
I walked
never. Below zero temperatures to be here today.
No, I know. And you live out in God's country, so that's quite a trek. I hope the heater was working.
Oh, yeah. No, the train was nice and warm today.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. The worker bees are here. Providing you with all of the President's Day content that you can stand, buddy. One thing I want to say, by the way, happy Monday, February 17th. The Republicans clearly aren't going to save us. I'm not sure if the Democrats are going to save us, but don't worry. I don't want you to worry. Even if the absolute worst happens, even if we descend into fascism and dictatorship, we are going to be saved in just under 8 years for sure. We are going to be hit by an asteroid in 2032. So it's 8 years, and then we won't have to worry about anything anymore. It's called Asteroid 2024, YR4, and it's coming. Don't believe those scientists who say that it has 2% or less chance of actually hitting us. I have faith in you, little asteroid. I have faith that you will just wipe the slate clean and let us start all over again. If little 2024 YR4 gets close, do you think Elon will go up in one of his own rockets? Do you think Jeff Bezos will go up to space in one of his own rockets and just kind of like wait and see what happens? And if there are any of us left on Earth, could we make sure those rockets never have the ability to land on Earth again? Let them go to the moon. They have plenty of money. They could build an entire habitat on the moon. Easy peasy. They can stack the rocket with all their, with all their girlfriends, but Elon Musk, once he gets all of his children on board, he's not going to have a whole lot of room in that rocket. This young woman who had a relationship with him claims that like 5 months ago she gave birth to number 13 of his brood. He, of course, says that not his, denying her. You'd think if only there was a way, like a scientific test that you could do to find out whether or not someone is actually your child. Oh, maybe someday science will come up with something like that. And this young woman and Elon can figure this out. Elon says she's trying to ensnare him. Yeah. Because if indeed she just gave birth to his child, do you think it was a virgin birth? Do you think that like an angel descended from the heavens and said, "Young woman, I am giving you Elon Musk's sperm. He will never know about it, but when the child is born, he will say you ensnared him"? with your feminine wiles. Yeah. The world is a little bit loony, so I've decided that rather than resisting that particular aspect, I'm all in. I'm all in for the loony. I think it's one way to survive. I was talking to my good friend and your media critic, Jennifer Schulze, who, by the way, was excerpted in Brian Stelter's newsletter today. And, she said that going forward, we have to live like two separate lives. We have to kind of split things off. There's going to be the segment of our lives where we resist and get angry and keep track of the news. And then there's this other segment of our lives separated by some kind of little wall where we enjoy the people around us, enjoy the arts, maybe go to a museum, maybe see a play, maybe go hear some music, maybe get together with friends for dinner and sort of coddle our humanity like it's a little tiny light and we don't want it to go out. But we can't do either of those things all the time. We can't just pretend, like some people would very much like to, that this isn't happening. I told you right after Trump was elected, there was that cruise line that offered people a 4-year cruise. So you get on the boat, and then by the time you get off the boat, Trump's gone. Yeah, that's not really very practical. And the only way that we can be sure that Trump's gone and that MAGA begins to die a slow and painful death, or a quick and painful death, is what we're doing right now. What we are doing right now. You can't do everything, but you can do something. And that's what people are doing. Because today is a day off for a lot of people. There are a lot of protests today. Also, more and more on social media, I'm seeing that on February 28th, which is a week from this Friday, people are calling for a one-day, not a boycott, but a one-day don't spend any money. Don't spend any money. Don't buy anything. I mean, obviously, if it's an emergency, it's an emergency. But don't buy anything. Don't fill the car up with gas that day. The idea is to send a message to corporate America, which, in case you haven't been paying attention, is largely capitulating to Donald Trump, to send a message to corporate America that we are very capable of using our dollars against them. We are very, very, very capable of doing that. If you want to know which businesses going forward to support, like, say, for instance, a business that refuses to back down on DEI, though somebody did send me, which I thought was brilliant. I think this was from a university or a college somewhere. They had a page that had previously been titled Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And they got rid of that title. And the page is still up there, but it's now called something like the page of opportunity, which is something I've suggested to a lot of these businesses. You know, there's a big push. DEI is the new boogeyman. Okay. Call it the Corporate Department of Opportunity. Don't have to fire anybody. Don't have to change a thing. I think that's a brilliant idea. I would love to see more companies dodge. You should, though, know that the NAACP is going to be putting out a list. They're saying it's a list for black shoppers, but I think we can all benefit from it, black and otherwise. They are going to put out a list of companies who are refusing to back down from their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And the companies that have appeared to at least capitulate by taking stuff off of their online presence, the NAACP is going to have a meeting with those companies. Very famously, I told you if you needed hardware to go to Lowe's rather than Home Depot because Lowe's didn't pony up any money for the Trump inauguration. Well, they have since started backtracking on anything about DEI. But the NAACP is going to meet with those companies, and they're going to let you know how those meetings turn out. But I can already tell you, Costco, if you don't have a membership at Costco, you need to get one now. Yes, maybe you don't need 50 rolls of toilet tissue, at least not very often. But Costco came out and said, you know what? There's nothing wrong with DEI. When there was a shareholder that put a voting measure on their ballot when they were getting ready to have their meeting to get rid of anything to do with DEI, Costco's board came out and said, we urge our stockholders to vote against this. We believe that we are stronger with a diverse workforce. They've also recently raised everybody's pay. Costco, like Trader Joe's, is famous for offering health insurance to people who are only working part-time, aside from a good hourly wage, which in some cases at Costco is now up to like $30 an hour. Beats an Amazon factory. Elf Cosmetics. They have said they are not backing off of DEI. And you know what? Their cosmetics are just as good, and they're a lot cheaper. So let's all go Elf. The NAACP is going to be putting out a guide for black buyers, black shoppers. And they are going to update it as they meet with various companies and say, you know, so no diversity. What? Would you explain that? Would you explain how you have decided that it's important to back off from your previous efforts to create a diverse workforce? Would you like to talk to us about that? And they're going to let their consumers know. Keisha Bross is described as an economic strategist at the NAACP. Keisha says they're not calling for a boycott, but they want to encourage consumers to buy in on companies that back their values. This advisory praises Costco, Apple, Ben & Jerry's, Delta Airlines, Elf Cosmetics, and J.P. Morgan Chase and Company. They're going to be having conversations with Lowe's, Target, Walmart, Amazon, Meta, McDonald's, Tractor Supply. And after those conversations take place, the NAACP says they will update their guidance as companies either roll back or reaffirm their commitments. You've got money. Money talks to companies. Protests talk to politicians. Protests showing up, writing an email, calling the office, showing up at the office, showing up outside a building. That's what speaks to a politician. Money speaks to a company. Money. So if I get updates on the NAACP Buyer's Guide, I will let you know. I will let you know about that. Paul, I know Andy sent over some of the sound from D.C. Do you have that in the array? Okay, maybe he didn't. No, he copied you on it. It came in about 15 minutes ago. Look for the email because we'll play it at the next segment. I also want you to know, because I have failed to mention this, that the phone lines are open. And when he is not putting together the sound from all the protests that took place in D.C., my favorite chant was where they wanted Congress to grow a spine. Grow a spine, Congress. Grow a spine. That was, I think, my favorite chant that I heard in all the different protest audio that I was listening to. So 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. And because I expect Paul to be able to answer the phones, load up that audio, and, by the way, at the same time, maybe play some audio for me, because he is a multifaceted, multi-talented human being. Paul, I want to play that Ken Martin from when he was on this is the guy who's the new head of the DNC, the guy whose main job is fundraising, but who many people also believe needs to lead this rather shambling Democratic Party. Ken Martin was on Morning Joe, and he had a message for Dems, and he wants the Dems to know that if there was ever a time to stand up and fight, this is it. And the reason I want to say this is because I believe he uses the word spineless, which came out a lot from the crowd protesting in Washington, D.C., but before that even happened, Ken Martin was on MSNBC with the Morning Joe crew this morning, and he had a message for Dems. Listen to this.
In 2016, someone said to me, the Republicans are shameless and the Democrats are spineless. The first thing we need to do is we need to stand up. If we're not willing to right now resist Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Elon Musk when the stakes are so high for the American people, how in the hell are anyone in this country going to believe that we would stand up and fight for them if they put us back in power? We have to resist. Now, we can't just live in that space of perpetual resistance. We need to very strenuously resist Donald Trump, and I'll get to that in a moment. But we also need to give people a sense of who we are as Democrats, what we believe in, and what we're fighting for. But as it pertains to the resistance, look at what Democratic attorney generals are doing, like my friend Keith Ellison from Minnesota, right? They're leading the charge right now and taking on Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Elon Musk through the courts, right? Our Democratic congressional members are using the power of their platform to move public sentiment against these cuts that we're seeing in the federal government right now. And it's local elected officials across the country right now who are giving hope to communities who are being ripped apart by this administration right now that they're going to be safe. Democrats are standing up. They're ready for this fight, and I'm happy to lead them.
Well, I hope they're going to start speaking out. I hope, and not just, this isn't just getting in front of a camera, okay? Because if you're going to get in front of a camera and give us a lecture or pontificate, I'd just as soon you stayed home. Because that's not going to do anybody any good. And that is going to reinforce the impression that some people have, not me, I know better, but some people have this impression that somehow Democrats think that they're better than everybody else. They look down on everybody else. We're smarter than you. We're better than you. And when a politician goes in front of a camera and speaks completely dispassionately, like they've got no skin in the game. Bernie Sanders isn't perfect, but you always get the feeling that he cares deeply about whatever he's saying, And he conveys that sense of that if you had lunch with Bernie Sanders, he would be the same guy he is in front of the cameras. So many people, and I can, from working in television and coaching people on how to be on television, so many people are so afraid of looking dumb. They really are. And so what that usually means is that they stiffen up, They use the most formal, jargon-laden verbiage that they can get out of their mouths because they don't want anybody to think they're stupid. The people that I trained who needed the most help with that were the most highly educated doctors and lawyers. And I said, look, you're not, when you're going on TV and you're doing this interview, you're not speaking to a room full of doctors. So let go of the medical jargon. Let go. Talk to me like a person. If you're telling one of your patients about a diagnosis, are you going to use, 15-syllable medical words? Or are you going to say, hey, there's a problem with your lungs? That's what I want to hear. And it's a really hard thing to do because nobody wants to look stupid. So they come off stiff. They come off removed. And I think that kind of, and I've said this before, and you know that I love people who teach at colleges. They are some of my best guests. But you don't want to feel that you are being lectured by an expert in the field when you hear from your local state rep, your state senator, from your congressperson, from your senator. You know they're not stupid. They wouldn't be in that job if they were stupid. So talk to me like a person. Anywho, let's go to the phone lines. Peter is on the line from Rogers Park. Hey, Peter, thanks for the call today.
Good afternoon, Joan. Great to hear you on the air. First, before I get to my 2 points, do you have some kind of an event on the 24th, some kind of a breakfast meeting? I think I had heard.
Yes, Friends of Labor in Joliet. I'm going to be doing my show. It's going to be, obviously, 8 to 10 a.m. is not when I'm on the air. So we're going to be recording it live on tape, and it will play during my time slot later Monday. I think it'll probably play from 2 to 4, and then I think Patty Vasquez is going to start her show an hour early. So, yeah, that's where I'm going to be, out at the Friends of Labor somewhere in Joliet. The address escapes me off the top of my head.
Is it possible they could post that information? I gather it's open for the public to come and listen? Yes, it is. You, if you're a union member, currently working or retired, you can get in. Or if you are a WCPT listener, you can also get in. Let's see. I'm looking at my emails to see if I can find the email that has all the details. And, of course, I cannot. It would be great if your staff could maybe put that on the website, and then I will look at it there and then go for it.
Okie dokie. I'm sure Andy Miles, our executive producer, is listening right now. Andy? Is there anything on the website? If not, maybe we could add it there. And I know probably sometime today we have a promo that's running, and I'm not sure when it's going to be running, but there will also be a promo that talks about this Friends of Labor. It's at a union hall. It's in Joliet. It's a breakfast. It's the Friends of Labor breakfast. 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., Monday the 24th. So okay. I will see if we can get that publicized a little bit more, okay?
Okay. The reason for my call is I believe it's time for us to turn the tables, take back this information war, and we start labeling MAGA for what it is. And many of us have probably seen the memes floating around on the internet, but I saw this yesterday and I thought it was brilliant. MAGA is morons are governing America. Okay. DEI is Donald plus Elon equals incompetence.
Ooh. I like that. Thank you.
There you go.
We're going to write that down, though. You know, we get scolded all the time, like, oh, you know, you shouldn't, you'll never get the MAGAs if you call them names. Well, you know what, kids? The people who are hardcore MAGA, they're going to be hardcore MAGA till the day they die. And it's not going to be like, oh, you could have brought them back to the fold. No, they are too far gone. I truly believe that. I believe that there are independents and people frustrated with both parties. Those voters are gettable, but the hardcore MAGA, ixnay, not going to happen.
Well, I just believe part of me is we have been too passive and just allowing them to push it over on us. And I think it's time to take off the gloves and call them for what they are.
Well, thank you for that, Peter. I appreciate the call. Take care of yourself,
well,
okay?
You. Take care. Thanks. All right. Bye.
We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with more of your texts and calls and more of my ramblings right after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We are reading your texts. Well, I'm actually reading the text and taking your calls. Hey, somebody sent me a schedule of nationwide protests, which, thank you. I know it's unless you include a name, I just see your phone number. So I don't know who to thank for this. But today, President's Day, it talked about the various protests at the Capitol and city halls. Friday, February 28th, remember I was telling you about that Don't Shop Day? It's called, apparently it has a name, Hit Them in Their Profits, Economic Blackout Protest. This isn't a march. This is no spending for 24 hours. So if you need to buy gas or any of that other stuff, you need a few groceries, do it on Thursday or do it on Saturday. It goes from the full 24 hours, from midnight Friday, or actually midnight Thursday to midnight Friday, 24 hours. A couple of people who've texted in said that they have canceled their Amazon. If you can do that, great. And if you don't feel comfortable canceling it, do what I do. Leave it there as a bookmark. And if you need to find something on it, look it up, get the name of the company, close down the tab that has Amazon, and go to your search engine, put in the name of the company, and buy from the company directly. If you need to use Amazon because you just don't know where to get that special doohickey, use it as a resource, but don't give Jeff Bezos any of your buying dollars. Let's go to the phone lines. Garrick is on the line. Hello, Garrick. Thank you for the call.
Hi, Joan. First of all, it was a pleasure meeting you a week or so ago at the Capitol.
Thanks for coming up to our table.
Yeah, we had a good time. Thank you, WC. Free tickets. I'm calling because you started talking about companies that aren't dealing with a racist policy, the puppet president. I just want to add something to your listeners. In regards to Costco, they charge a yearly membership, which isn't too much, but your accumulated purchases throughout the year get a rebate check. So my wife and I are getting like a $500 rebate coming in the mail here. So if anybody's interested in getting a membership from Costco, don't be afraid because they charge a membership. You'll get a rebate in the end.
Yeah, I have the cheapest membership you can get, which is I think I paid $60 for it. I used to go to Costco all the time because I don't know if every Costco has this, but a lot of them have a Costco gas station, and the gas is significantly cheaper at the Costco gas station than it is absolutely anywhere else. So that used to be, you know, and then of course you're there getting gas and you're like, oh, well, you know, maybe I'll just stop in and see if I need, you know, half a dozen bottles of Mexican Coke.
There you go. We do the same thing when we have Costco. We usually I'll gas up there, and the last time I gassed was last week when it was under $3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if every Costco has a gas station, but friends, if the Costco near you has a gas station, trust me, if you do nothing else but buy gas there, if you never walk into the warehouse, never shop there at all, you're still going to save hundreds of dollars a year.
Yeah, it's find this for easy to shop around. You got lots of well,
thanks so much for the call, Garrick. Appreciate it.
Have a great afternoon.
You too. Let's go to our good friend Dave from Hoffman Estates, who's on the line. Hello, Dave.
Hey, Joan. Talking about Elon Musk, is there any truth to the rumor that Elon Musk is the father to Octomom's kids that time?
Oh.
Just thinking, wondering, asking for a friend.
Yeah, well, you know, he seems to be a one-man repopulation effort. You know, they always say that of all the ethnicities, you know, white people have like the lowest birth rate. Elon Musk is single-handedly trying to get that birth rate back up. Like I said, if this indeed, this woman, if her claims prove to be true, that will be kid number 13. Woohoo! Like the old days.
Yeah. What I was going to mention, I read a story here about where Pentagon moving to take back the troops booted for refusing the COVID vaccine. This was from that directive. This directive reflects that the executive order signed by Trump about a week after he came in office. And the Defense Department has told the military services to reach out once again to service members who were forced out or voluntarily left the military for refusal on getting the COVID vaccine.
And you know what really frosts me about that, Dave? I don't care whether you get the COVID vaccine or not. I'm disappointed if you don't, but your health, I guess. But what these people did is they refused a direct order. When you enter the military, as you're going through processing, you get every vaccination in the book. Nobody says, oh, do you want smallpox or measles? What would you like? They say, stand here, give me your left arm, give me your right arm, go out. So this was purely political. It was a purely political statement. And what bothers me is Pete Hegseth wants to reinstate or at least give them all back pay. If they've moved on and found other jobs and don't want to come back to the military, well, we're just going to give them a nice check. And we're going to reward them for refusing a direct order. And we are going to set the precedent that if there is something political that you as a grunt really don't like, well, you can stand up and say no, because who needs to take orders? Who needs to follow orders? That's for other people.
Yeah, the ones that were forced out, from the way I'm reading it, the ones who were forced out would get the back pay. Others who just voluntarily left would not probably get the back pay. But like you say, this refusal on that, then they have to pass, all the, wait again and all of that stuff, and they got to sign up and re-enlist for 2 years minimum, and then at least 8,200 troops were forced out the military in 2021 for refusing, like you say, to obey a lawful order.
Yeah.
And since 2023, when the military service is advising them they could return so far, only 113 have re-enlisted back. And according to the services, 3,748 Marines were discharged. and 25 opted to re-enlist. The few, the proud. Like you were talking about that order. What are they going to do if they were under fire and the sergeant tells them, "Go, okay, you got to go take that hill"? And,
we got to go take that hill. Oh no, I'm sorry. That looks way too dangerous.
I might get a shot.
Let's sit down in our foxhole and discuss it, and maybe I can convince you that's a bad order. I don't see that working out really well.
And then 1,903 Army were discharged and 73 returned. And 1,878 Navy, and only 2 returned. And then 671 Airmen, and only 13 returned. So just thinking, what these people are willing to give back money on that to these, is that kind of, and their old rank, isn't this kind of like violating Doge?
Well, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but that is certainly a cost. It would seem to be a waste. Wouldn't that seems wasteful to you, Dave? Doesn't it?
Yes, ma'am. It could go into millions, too, and it's 2 years at least, 3 years with some of them.
Yeah, so, and you know what? I wonder how that's going to work out for them. You disobeyed a direct order, and yet you're coming back to the military. How are your superiors supposed to feel about that? Are they supposed to think, oh, you were so brave? This wasn't somebody taking the moral high ground and refusing an order that was clearly illegal. This isn't somebody being ordered to shoot a family in cold blood and saying, no, I won't do it. This was whole different. I don't know. If I had somebody under my command who clearly has a history of refusing orders they don't like, I would not be happy to have that person.
No, I think I would definitely put them in the lead man in the front. I wouldn't have them in the back.
Hey, Jerry, you're taking point today. And you know what, Jerry? You're taking point tomorrow. And you're taking point the day after that.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise they refuse again. He's already refused. But, and then so others can come on real quick. I'm sure the way when, Trump's been giving some of these degenerates and that back, maybe he'll clean up and change it for Bobby Garwood, the deserter and the guy from Vietnam, that former Marine he had actually took up arms with the Vietnamese for a while.
Oh, dear.
And helped. So
I was thinking when I said illegal orders, I was thinking of things like the My Lai massacre, where
he probably will clear up Callie's record too, even though he's dead now. But that Garwood, I mean, I would think all these Marines and that would hate this guy because he was out 15 years in that, and they finally turned himself in at the Finnish embassy in Saigon, but. But if you do mention Bill Clinton or Jane Fonda, they're ready to kill him,
Yep.
But not these guys, if they're for Trump. So, anyway, let me clear off. You got others that want to.
Thanks,
I just want to share that tidbit. Be well.
Thank you. You too. We are going to take a break. I'm going to catch up on the text line. We're going to be back with more 773-763-9278 right after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
Andy Miles sent me the information on that Friend of Labor breakfast. That is Monday. Is that a week from today? That is a week from today. Monday the 24th, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. In Joliet. It is the annual Southland Friends of Labor breakfast. It's going to be at IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW 176. And the address is 110 Frontage Road in Joliet. 110 Frontage Road in Joliet, or as a DJ I used to listen to said, Frontage, 110 Frontage Road in Joliet. So that is where I'm going to be. And if Joliet is too far for you, if you're going to be around this Saturday, because you know what? Don't ask me why, but for some reason, Joan Esposito is everywhere these days. I'm going to be in McHenry County. I'm going to be speaking to the McHenry County Democratic Women Saturday, February 22nd, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's a very nice little lunch. There's a buffet lunch. There's going to be baskets. There's going to be a cash bar. And I will be the keynote speaker for that. It's at Boulder Ridge Country Club at Lake in the Hills. So if Joliet is too far for you, maybe Lake in the Hills is easier. McHenry County Democratic Women. And you can go to www.mccdw, McHenry County Democratic Women, get that, mccdw.net. And you can pick up a ticket. And I will be there. And please come on up and say hello. It should be a good time. Let's go back to the phone lines. Our good friend Jim is on the line from Chicago. Hello, Jim.
Hi, Joan. With the death of human intelligence imminent, I'm just wondering what morning clothes will I wear to the wake? Where will intelligence where will it repose on the earth?
Yeah.
And because we're in the absolute death throes of intelligence. It's absolutely disappeared. Just a couple of.
I think you're right, but as I said, Jim, 8 more years and we're gone. Asteroid, what is it, 2024? YR4 is going to save us.
Yes, death wears thy sting, as Shakespeare would say. But real quick, the ventriloquist dummy vice president, what's his name?
Junior Dummy?
Yeah, Junior Dummy is. I'm watching him chastise the European electric. The politicians there are saying that, ooh, I don't know about the way you're running your elections. In the meantime, we see what the destruction's here, and then Nazi Fagin shows up like he's real cute with the red hat on, with his granddaughter. He makes this man production. And the president of Ukraine's on for about 25 minutes to Meet the Press, trying to explain that there is no plan. The United States has no plan for this, the end of this war.
No.
But in the meantime, just to muddy the waters, they have Rubio come out. Oh yeah, we're going to go down there. We're going to get Putin. But we got to get our hands on that those precious metals they got. We got to split up with Putin.
I saw that over the weekend. It said Volodymyr Zelensky refuses Trump's offer for help if Zelensky promises 50% of the mineral wealth of Ukraine to the United States. I mean, dear God, this guy's an embarrassment.
Yeah, it's criminal blackmail. But these criminals are just running roughshod over us. But we had a chance to impeach him twice, Joan, and we also, the long arm of the law almost had him. And we just set free a lunatic. That's
I think you make an interesting point, Jim. When historians look back at whatever havoc he ends up wreaking in the final analysis, they are going to point out all the opportunities that the judicial branch, the legislative branch, the DOJ, that other Republican Party members, there were so many opportunities that presented themselves to get rid of this guy once and for all. If at the second impeachment, Mitch McConnell supposedly told the Republicans, look, this is our opportunity to get rid of this guy. He's a cancer, and we can blame it on the Democrats. And that was his pitch, and supposedly a bunch of Republicans came to him and said, well, you know, if I vote against him, I'm not going to hang on to my Senate seat, and I'm going to be primaried. And they ended up not voting to convict. Had the Senate done that, he would have been ineligible to ever run for president again. All of these criminal cases would have been progressed to a decision. There would have been other cases pursued and dollars to donuts, even if he never served a day of jail time. This guy would have been hit with so much in the way of fines, in the way of lost pride. We would have never heard from him again. There were Merrick Garland wanted to seem impartial, so he waited a full year before he set a special prosecutor for Donald Trump. That was an entire year we lost. There were so many people and so many opportunities to change this reality, but here we are.
But, Joan, you know what? Serendipity plays such a huge part in history as it is. And you're exactly right. Those are the serendipitous things that we could have worked in our favor. But here we are, Joan. Anyway, have a great show. She's talking about, you know, I don't know how much I can't, you know, it's beyond belief that and then you watch these people and they in these interviews and they don't ask pertinent questions about what do you think the future of America is? What is MAGA? What is their ambition? What is their ambition? I mean, those are the questions that I like to see asked. But anyway, Joan, you can come on the show today. Thank you, Joan.
Thanks, Jim. You know, I interviewed a while back, for those of you who are daily listeners, I interviewed a woman by the name of Jessica Craven. She does a newsletter called Chop Wood, Carry Water. It comes from a Buddhist saying, you know, what do you do in good times or in tough times? You chop wood, you carry water. And then what do you do when good times come? You chop wood, you carry water. You are who you are, and you continue on. She actually is on TikTok, which I have been, mostly I go for book talk, but I'm trying to get a better feel for TikTok since that seems to be where so many younger voters are. And she was talking about how her physical therapist, a young guy, told her that he didn't vote in the last election. And she was like, oh, really? And he was like, well, I thought you were going to yell at me. And she goes, well, why? You know, tell me. And he said, well, because he didn't understand, because this is no longer taught in our schools. You know, he really wasn't that motivated by the presidential election, didn't really feel his vote mattered there, and didn't even understand the down ballot races. He said, you know, I don't have time to do the research. And she said, honestly, I've done the research, and I can tell you it's like an hour. And I bet you spend more than an hour at the gym or more than an hour planning out your meals. And she explained to him down ballot races and how the people you elect, say for your state's attorney, for the people you elect as the representatives in the state legislature, how all of the things that affect your life are influenced and governed by laws. And that whether or not you care about the presidential race, there's races that will affect how you live your life on a daily basis. And he thanked her and he said, you know, nobody's ever really explained that to me before. Whew. While we ponder that, let's go back to the phone lines. Stan is on the line from Champaign. Hey, Stan, thanks for the call today.
Yes. One thing that I think we ought to go and make sure gets on that list of things, opportunities lost to make sure Trump never had a second term. You got to go back to the beginning of his first term when Nancy Pelosi was handed that finding by the Mueller Commission. The Mueller, whatever his first name is, said that he had 7 slam dunks for obstruction of justice. And Nancy Pelosi says, oh, I just don't like impeachment. And now we have Trump. It's Nancy Pelosi's fault.
Well, I think, Stan, there's plenty of blame to go around. But you're absolutely right. Mueller, despite the fact that Bill Barr came out and said that this exonerates Trump, Mueller said to the American people that it was not his job to indict, but he clearly laid out the step-by-step case that any prosecutor could have used to bring obstruction charges. And you're absolutely right. Nobody did that. And you've got to remember, though, that Bill Barr was head of the DOJ. So I don't know if that had an effect, but it would have been Congress could have said, we want to, move forward with this whole obstruction of Congress thing. But, so Stan, I'm not saying there weren't other people. Actually, Stan, I'm saying there's a whole lot of people who let us down. But thanks for the call, though. Don't get many calls from Champaign. It's great to hear from you, Stan.
Most people don't mention Nancy Pelosi, though. And if there would have been 3 impeachments of Trump, if the rest of them would have had to be done, I can't imagine how he wouldn't have been impeached by the 3rd time for J6.
Yeah, woulda, shoulda, coulda, Stan. If only you and I could go back and rewrite things. I've got to get to the news, but thank you again for the call. Thank you, Stan. We are going to take a break for news and start some of our interviews right after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
And I'm joined by Michael McElroy, who is the political reporter at Cardinal and Pine. That is the Courier publication of North Carolina. Michael, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
I want to give you a real tip of the hat. While they haven't decided to strike the words or clean off the calendar, this administration has canceled any kind of program or recognition for Black History Month. And I was talking to somebody over the weekend who said that because of that, they were kind of trying to organize their own newsletter around, hey, Black History Month, here's some things you should know, since there is absolutely no recognition of this now at the national level. And in Cardinal and Pine, one of the articles that you published recently was about 15 significant stops along Fayetteville's African-American History Trail. And I think this is exactly what local publications are going to have to try to do. And what I would like to do, I don't know, maybe once a week or something like that. We see what's going on with the federal government and a lot of the racism and just cruelty that is taking root. And it's going to be up to publications like Cardinal and Pine and Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, to at least try to pick up some of the slack. And by the way, it's a really interesting article, too. I never knew about the triple nickel, which is, for those of you who've never heard of it, the historic 555th Battalion, or the triple nickel, an all-black unit, the first military smoke jumpers in the United States. And those are the people who parachute into forest fires. Fascinating stuff in your own community that you might not have been familiar with before. So congratulations, and I hope you continue to pick up the slack.
Well, thank you, and I think we will. But the one thing I'll point out about that is there was a heck of a lot of slack even before Trump came into another term, and it was already it was still just 1 month, a year. And so these stories are lots of them, and they have always been neglected, not just now, but they're even more so now. And so, yes, there's no question that that's part of our mission to continue to tell those stories.
Now on to politics. North Carolina has been one of the livelier states for state Republicans behaving badly, trying to shut the lights off on the way out the door. One of the things that I think we last focused on was this. There was a vote for a seat on your state Supreme Court. And it was a close election, as many are, and the democratically inclined woman won. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, the gentleman from the Republican side of the aisle who was opposing her tried to get thousands of ballots thrown off. In other words, he wanted these ballots to be not counted, to be thrown out, which would have given him the seat, which, how did that, did I explain that correctly? Was there something else that I missed?
No, that's about it. But I really do wish that we could say that he tried and put it in the past tense.
He's still trying?
Verb. Oh, yeah, it's still ongoing. He's trying. And it's just really complicated and convoluted thing. And there's was it going to be federal court or state court? And it's gone back and forth. And the federal court sent it back to the state court. And then it was appealed. And it's been back and forth and back and forth. But there has just only now, the last week, there have been several rulings in the case. But the one that happened last week was the first one on the merits of the case. And eventually, after all this time, it went back to the lowest rung of the state court system. And a judge in the Wake County Superior Court ruled against Griffin. But I wish that were the end of the story. It won't stop. And it's going to go to the appeals court next, where Republicans have a really big majority, including Jefferson Griffin, who is that judge. He's an appellate court judge. But yeah, so it's just really big tangle. But you got the bottom line correct. This guy lost by 734 votes to the Democratic incumbent. And he filed a protest for 65,000 ballots that he said should not have been counted for varying reasons, even though they were counted according to the rules at the time. So he's saying these rules should not have been in place or were misinterpreted, and therefore those ballots shouldn't have been counted. That's 65,000 people. And that includes 5,500, a little bit more, active duty military voters who were stationed overseas and their families. And there are a lot of these voters who voted in this way, but he's only protesting the military voters who voted in this way in Democratic counties. And then
they wouldn't want to disqualify any Republican votes now, would they?
No. Although of the 60,000 that was based on an idea that their registrations on a state database that were missing some information, even though that didn't mean there was anything wrong with their actual registrations. There were a lot of Republicans among those 60,000, including some elected Republican officials. So that's just funny on its face. But the active duty military members, those were only in Democratic counties. And Jefferson Griffin filed a new brief with the court that said, look, if you're uncomfortable getting rid of all 65,000, let's just start with the military, and then once I'm in the lead, you can stop throwing out votes.
Oh, that's so big of him. Oh, yeah. A man who really cares about the bureaucracy and wasting money and time. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. He just gives till it hurts, doesn't he?
Yeah. And he keeps giving. And the other big thing is he has not commented publicly on any of this. He deleted all of his social media accounts, and he's just completely MIA because he says that to comment on this case would violate his judicial ethics. But that only applies to any case that he might be a judge in. It does not apply to cases in which he is a plaintiff, which is funny, too.
Well, I know that not everybody stays up on the day-to-day political machinations like you do. But this seems to me, if I were a resident of North Carolina, it would really tick me off that somebody who was already a judge and kind of supposed to know better was trying to use the system to defeat a winner and win when he didn't get the votes.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely done that. And there was a protest just today, a rally, I guess, rather, just today, right in front of the North Carolina State Supreme Court building, which will eventually get this case. And there were, probably a little bit more probably than 1,000 people there. And that was the theme, bipartisan anger. And the other big theme being that, if he is successful in this, which based on a claim that has almost zero legal basis or foundation behind it, if he is successful, then that really is a harbinger of what we're looking at in future elections, in which there is just be no incentive for a losing candidate to concede and just find some reason to protest and say, I think this law should have been different, or I think this was done in a bad way, and contest the vote and try to throw it out after the fact.
I was talking to an investigative reporter by the name of Greg Palast, and he has been doing a real deep dive on voter suppression in Georgia, and he is very concerned that this is Republicans' new weapon. They don't have to worry about unpopular stances if they can suppress the vote of people who have a tendency to vote Democratic, whether it's a Democratic area of the state, whether it is a minority precinct where people tend to vote Democratic more than otherwise. And his belief is this is the Republicans' new underhanded. They don't even have to worry about gerrymandering. If they can, get rid of legitimate votes, they don't have to worry about being a majority party. Do you see those kinds of things in North Carolina?
Well, I will say that it must be said that there are a lot of Republicans among the people who are angry about this with Jefferson Griffin. And so what I think it might actually be is it's a way for a minority within the Republican Party to make it so that they can stay in power as the minority, even within their own party. Because you have the General Assembly, who is not here, who is very powerful and maybe the most powerful legislative body in the country, who are not elected statewide, obviously. And so they are elected by a very small number of people, but they have this outsized control. And there was even one of the Republicans on the state Supreme Court issued a dissent when the state Supreme Court agreed to take the case and stay or prevent the Board of Elections from certifying the election in the Riggs versus Griffin. One of the Republican justices wrote a dissent saying we should not be taking this case. It's way too late. There are federal and state constitutional restrictions against messing with things right before an election, and that would include after the results. And even if I would agree that there are some merits to these things should be changed by the legislature, it's way too late to take it now. And that's a Republican judge, but he may be a minority on that court. And so it's not – I think that there are lots of Republicans who are upset about this as well. So I would say that, so yes, the danger is that a minority, even among Republicans, are fixing things so that they can stay in power while being the minority.
Ugh. I'm talking to Michael McElroy, who's the political reporter at Cardinal and Pine. That's the Courier publication about North Carolina. When we come back, I'm going to ask Michael about one of my favorite politicians in the whole country. I got to know him on social media, Jeff Jackson. He was a one-term congressperson who was gerrymandered out of his seat and has been elected to another post within the state, but a post that may or may not have its powers limited, again, by Republicans. We're going to be right back with this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Joining me is Michael McElroy, who is the political reporter at Cardinal and Pine, which is the Courier Newsroom publication of North Carolina. Anybody who's listened to this show for a while knows that I loved to play the video posts, audio posts that Jeff Jackson put up when he was a congressman from North Carolina, first-term congressman. And it was interesting because he would say, like, here's what you saw on the news. Let me tell you what happened behind the scenes. And you should know about this, and you should know about that. And he became an absolute sensation. It was like a little civics lesson. You know, this is how we do this. This is something you should know. And he said something about, you know, one of the things you should know is some of the Congress people who are the most outrageous and say the most incendiary things on camera. He said, when you have a committee meeting with them and there are no cameras, he said, they're head down, business as usual. You know, there's no anger, there's no hand waving, there's no performance. And it was just this, it was great because it was like he was our surrogate in the Congress. Well, he was gerrymandered out of his congressional seat, so he ran for attorney general in North Carolina, a race that he won. But North Carolina, the state where Republicans behave really badly, they are trying to be a thorn in his side. Michael, would you explain what's going on?
Yeah, so Jeff Jackson did win his race, and he beat one of the biggest Republican firebrands, Dan Bishop. I keep calling him Greg. I've been calling him Greg Bishop for a long time. His name is not Greg Bishop. His name is Dan Bishop. And he beat Dan Bishop pretty substantially, at least when it comes to in a close state, by 3 percentage points. And he's the state attorney general. And as soon as he won, even before he took office, the General Assembly passed a bill that stole or took a lot of power from the governor, which is also a Democrat, and the attorney general's office. And one of the big things it did was it passed a bill that said that the attorney general could not take a position in court if it clashed with the position established by the General Assembly. And that it could not declare any law passed by the General Assembly as unconstitutional. So it basically took all the Attorney General's powers away and made it, and we're not all, but a lot of them, and it essentially made it an extension of the General Assembly. It made it an arm of the General Assembly. And then after he took office, this was a couple of weeks ago, it introduced a bill, hasn't voted on it yet, but it introduced a bill that would prevent Jeff Jackson as Attorney General from suing the Trump administration over any executive orders. So North Carolina... Wait a
minute, isn't that his job? Isn't that what the Attorney General does if needed?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, okay. Just so we're clear.
Yes, in the state, even in the state constitution. Now, I guess I should be clear: the state constitution does not mention Trump by name, but it does say that he has the power to contest any federal law and to sue on behalf of the people of North Carolina. And he's already done that. He has been among the states that have sued over the birthright citizenship executive order. He sued over the funding freezing executive order. He sued over the DOJ trying to get access to both Social Security and only just that one. But he has been very active and trying to block these executive orders and suing the Trump administration. And so the General Assembly, which is Republican-controlled in both chambers, has introduced a bill that would strip his power to do that. So it again wants to make the Attorney General an extension of the General Assembly.
How's that going over?
I don't know. I mean, they they passed that one bill earlier, and that is held up in court. Both Jeff Jackson and Josh Stein, who was elected governor, sued over that bill. So that is working its way through the state court system. And this bill that this is, again, just introduced, it's going to be, we're going to have to see. I mean, the Republicans lost their supermajority, as we've discussed in previous times. And so they can't just force a bill, over the governor's veto. But they can do a lot of other shenanigans. They can wait until one Democrat happens to be out of the office to hold an emergency vote. They can definitely still pass this thing. So we're just going to have to see. I mean, I think it's blatantly unconstitutional. And so this will also be held up in court. But while it's held up in court, he may be unable to, issue lawsuits against the executive orders that are coming.
Well, would he be unable to do that could the courts do what we've seen them do with some of the executive orders, say, we're telling you this executive order cannot be enforced until both sides are heard in court, and then there's a final decision. But until then, it's on hold. Maybe Jeff Jackson could get something like that?
Maybe, but it should be through the state courts. And again, the appellate and Supreme Court they retain a Republican supermajority, and so it's just who knows what kind of reception ultimately those bills will have. So it's just going to be, I mean, again, but though even if it's not ultimately successful, it is this barrier to the Attorney General doing his job against any Trump executive orders that he thinks is unconstitutional. Wow. Man, your state continues to be interesting, and that, Michael, is not a compliment.
Well, but I think that it is. I mean, again, the Democrat, the North Carolina elected a Democratic governor, a Democratic attorney general. They rejected one of the farthest right, super fundamentalist candidates for state Supreme Court. For state superintendent for public schools. They rejected that person, and they did vote for Allison Riggs as a state attorney, Supreme Court. So Democrats statewide had a really good night on election night, Trump aside. So it is an interesting thing. It is a super purple state, but the Republican legislature has had to pass these gerrymandering laws. They have had to do things like this because they know that they don't do great in statewide elections.
Wow. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. You have such a fascinating political situation there. Thanks for bringing us up to speed on this.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Michael McElroy, political reporter at Cardinal and Pine, the Courier publication of North Carolina. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We have spoken before with Rich Logis, founder of Leaving MAGA. And you can look at the website, leavingmaga.org. He talked to us about his own journey as a hardcore MAGA supporter to somebody who was able to sort of step outside of all of that and take a really good look at it and decide that maybe that wasn't who he was or who he wanted to be. We haven't spoken for a while, so we asked Rich to join us again today. How are you, Rich? Paul, I don't hear anything. Hello? Hello? Is anybody there? Does anybody hear me? Ah! I am a voice crying in the wilderness. We just had Rich, and somehow... Hearing the sound of my voice was enough to make him head for the hills. Yep. Okay. Paul is back at the... Oh, okay, fine. While Paul is back at the studio, tracking Rich Lowe just down like a dog, I'll tell you a little bit more about the website, leavingmaga.org. Paul, I'm hearing some echo. Can you do something about that? Not that I don't enjoy my voice enough to hear it twice. But if you go to leavingmaga.org, the first thing you see is their mission statement. He would like other people to leave the MAGA cult. He wants people to share their stories about what drew them to being MAGA and when they changed their minds. As he says, he was a devoted member of MAGA for 7 years. And in 2021, he said, I realized I'd been mistaken. Even then, it took me a full year to break away. During that time, I came to understand that MAGA is sustained by a series of myths that are intended to create perpetual feelings of desperation and panic. Rich joins us now. Hey, Rich, how are you?
Hey, Joan. Thanks for having me back. Always great to be with you.
Always great to talk to you. You know, we've been talking for a while now, and, it appears that at least they may not have won the war, but MAGAs so far have won the battle. We've got Donald Trump in the White House again. He is instituting Project 2025 very faithfully. He seems to be trying to get rid of any accomplishments by gay people, black people, women. Some people are saying that the saying shouldn't be "Make America Great Again." It should be "Make America White Again." Are you still hearing from people who are leaving MAGA, and what are they saying right now?
Sure. And let me offer some optimism, Joan, if I may, for listeners.
Oh, please, Rich, please.
And I want it to be, it'll be genuine hopefulness and not just wishful thinking. But since I was last with you, we have added more testimonials of those who have left to our site at leavingmaga.org. Thank you for mentioning that at the outset. Undoubtedly, listeners have also seen more and more short vignettes of people who are expressing their regret and remorse for supporting Trump. And so while we have more testimonials ourselves, I want to ask everyone to do something that might belie a little bit our sense of urgency, which is to be patient as more and more Trump voters come to realize that Trump is not going to fix anything for them. And in fact, a lot of his actions are going to harm their lives, livelihoods, and families. And when that does happen, because it will, and it's already begun, I would ask everyone to please resist the temptation to say, I told you so, and let them know, if one is willing to, let them know about our organization, because we are the support group for those who have doubts about supporting Trump and for those who decide to leave MAGA. And let me just say, Joan, I don't have a problem with people feeling the consequences and repercussions of their choices.
Well, that's, Rich, what I was just going to actually ask you about, because there is one train of thought that goes, people voted for Donald Trump. They want what he's going to bring to the table. So let's sit back. I mean, we've seen people in Alabama get hit with $100 surcharges for their utilities. The one young senator from Alabama who did the rebuttal to one of the State of the Unions, and she's now waking up to the fact that the university in Alabama is not going to get any funds to continue research from the NIH. And the University of Alabama is the single largest employer in the state of Alabama. Republican people are waking up to the oh, wait a minute, sort of like, we knew you were going to do all this stuff, but we thought we would be exempt. There's a school of thought among Democrats that's, you know what, just sit back and let it happen and let people realize what they voted for. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that this is going to sound perhaps as a defense, Joan, and it's not intended to be. But there's a lot of commentary about Trump voters that they should have known what it was that they were voting for. And I agree, they should have known. But I think for many, they really didn't. And the reason they didn't is the same reason that they're not going to hear about any of what you're just talking about, because the right-wing information silo keeps this information from them. When I was in the MAGA community, all I ever consumed was far-right-wing media. And I wrote for that media. I created content, had bylines in Fox and The Federalist and Real Clear Politics and other sites. It was a rule within MAGA that any information that even remotely refuted or challenged the pervasively held mythologies and beliefs of the community, it was shunned. It was kept out. So and it was never circulated amongst my fellow MAGA compatriots, and I was guilty of that as well, because it wasn't until I started to have doubts that I diversified my news and information sources. So there is a part of this, yes, where voters are going to they're going to realize that they thought they were voting for something A, but instead something B, C, up to Z is going to happen to them. And when it does, I want them to know that it's okay to acknowledge a mistake that we made, that even if it was well-intended, that it's okay to acknowledge an error, correct that mistake, and listen to those doubts and say that it's okay to leave. It won't happen quickly for many, but if it happened for me, Joan, and all the other testimonials that are on our site, we are living proof that it is possible for people to leave.
I want to talk to you more about your own personal journey, Rich. You say on the website that it took you a year to really sort of fully leave the MAGA cult behind. What were the steps? What was the first thought that you had about maybe this isn't what I thought it was, and when did it finally reach a breaking point?
Sure, thanks for asking that, and it did take a year, and there are two primary reasons it took so long. One was that I knew that if I left, I was walking away from a community, and that's what I call MAGA. MAGA is a political community. It's where adherents and members find respect and validation and appreciation and vindication. I had that. So I knew that I'd be walking away from that. I also knew that leaving Joan would have meant that I had to come to a liberating but painful realization that pretty much everything I had believed was a lie. And not just one or two beliefs, but years and years of accumulated beliefs. And it was in this late summer, early fall of 2021 when my governor, Ron DeSantis, invited anti-vaxxers to his pressers. And when that happened, it confused me. I did not understand why he was doing that. I was someone who was not anti-vaccine. I admit that I didn't take COVID seriously in the beginning, but I did not think it was a bioweapon. When Ron DeSantis started talking about Fauciism and gave a platform to anti-vaxxers, it was like I ran face first into a brick wall. And it was at that moment when I started to diversify my news and information sources. And then I delved deeper into January 6th. It was not a day that I supported, but I thought it had been hyperbolized and made into a bigger deal than it really was by the press and Democrats and anti-Trump Republicans. And I went through the next year just having this ping-ponging emotionally and personally and politically, in which I was wrestling with this gradual reality I was coming to, that I could not support MAGA any longer, that it was not, when I came to understand better what it was, that I couldn't support it. And the final straw for me was May 24th, 2022. And that was the day of the Uvalde, Texas school shooting. And after that day, Joan, I quietly left MAGA. I only told a few people. I privately left. And when I did that, something was gnawing at me that wasn't enough. I was always very unapologetically public in my support for Trump. I felt that I needed to reciprocate, and I needed to be unapologetically public in my renunciation of MAGA. And it was on August 30th, 2022, when I published a mea culpa. And in that mea culpa, I said that I was wrong, that I hurt others, and that I was sorry that I supported Trump, DeSantis, and MAGA. And the truth of it, Joan, is I never thought that anybody would care after I did that. And I instantaneously received messages from people talking about their friends and family. And I will admit that I was oblivious and naive to the fact that so many relationships have been torn asunder by Trump and MAGA. And it was something that I had to accept, to take responsibility for, that I had helped the president divide the country and pit strangers, friends, and family against each other.
It's a powerful story, Rich. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk to you about those of us who still have either friends or colleagues who are quite firm in the fact that they voted for Trump, and how to have conversations with them. I'm speaking to Rich Logis, founder of Leaving MAGA. You can find all about what he's doing and the stories of him and other people at leavingmaga.org. We're going to be right back after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
I'm talking to Rich Logis, who used to be a very strong supporter of MAGA until he started realizing that some of what was happening did not fit with what he knew or what he valued. He left the organization. He has now created a website, leavingmaga.org, where other people who are either out of MAGA or are contemplating leaving MAGA can tell their stories. Rich, before we went to the break, I told you that I wanted to ask you about having a conversation. You know, if those of us who have people in our lives who are who at least told us whether or not we know how deeply MAGA they are. They told us that they voted for Donald Trump, knowing what he did last time, knowing what he was capable of. Do you just change the subject, Rich, and just do sort of like behave like everything's normal and then just hope that sooner or later they come to a different belief on their own? And also, too, we're talking about MAGA like it's a broad brush. I mean, there are certain people who believe that they could never vote for anybody but a Republican, no matter how bad that Republican is. There are people who vote MAGA because they don't like black people. And, you know, MAGA wants to get rid of all of DEI and sort of try to get black people to remember their place. Does it depend how you have a conversation or not? Does it depend on why you suspect that person is a part of MAGA, Rich?
So I want to, Joan, keep with this leitmotif of good news here, because I actually put something together that I would like to direct everyone to. And I always like to say that our content is completely free. There's no strings attached. There's an ebook that is at our site. And near the end of it, it's very, very brief book. It's around 50 pages. Near the end of it, there is a blueprint that I put together. It's a 5-step how-to on how to re-engage friends and family who are in the MAGA community. And this is not theoretical. It's not abstract. We've actually employed it, and we've had some real-world success using it. I also want listeners to know that I have been receiving messages from those who were prompted by friends and family to reach out to me because they are starting to have some doubts themselves. So I would say that when it comes to the dynamics of friends and family, I would defer to individuals on whether they think it's best to engage or not with their close ones, friends, family. But I do think that there's actually a lot of opportunity to be had based on the way that I have created this 5-step strategy on how to rejuvenate relationships, because it is true that there are some who will never change their mind. It is so cemented, the support, that there's no breaking it. But I think, Joan, I think that's probably a minority of MAGA Trump voters. And the reason I think it's a minority is because one of the approaches that we have in our ebook and with this blueprint that we put together is we start getting to one of the hearts of why this problem exists as it does, and that's mis and disinformation. Mis and disinformation has reached a level of a national crisis. And when you read aloud at the outset of our website about how MAGA is sustained by numerous mids, that's really what we're talking about. We are talking about the lies and the mis and disinformation. And so while some percentage will never change their mind, I do believe that most in MAGA deep down are good people. And though I'm, again, not defending ignorance, I think that many of their normal anxieties, fears, and concerns, which we share also, especially economically, I think they've been exploited and manipulated, and they have been led astray. And friends and family can course correct with enough time and patience. But I do also, Joan, want to emphasize that time and patience are necessary. But I ask that people not give up on their friends and family who are in MAGA. I had my own friends who didn't give up on me, and it did help me in my transition out of MAGA.
How did they handle you being MAGA if they weren't? Did they just ignore it? Did they try to have conversations with you? How did that work?
We didn't have political conversations, and that's my fault. That's because I was not an approachable person when it came to politics. When I finally left MAGA and I approached my blue friends, those whom I know voted Democratic, to each and every one of them, Joan, I went to them and I said, I will respect if you don't accept my apology, but I need to offer it to you. I'm sorry that I thought of you as someone who was an existential threat to my life, my livelihood, my family, and my country. And every single one of them, Joan, said to me, Rich, we disagreed with what you said. We didn't support what you supported, but apology accepted. And one in particular, Joan, someone who was very important to me during college, gave me numerous second chances I did not deserve, said to me, Rich, I always knew you'd come back. And Joan, I say that because that's what's possible. We have to be guided by some optimism and hopefulness and what is possible. And I know that for many listening, there are feelings of hopelessness and despair. I understand that, especially everything that's happened in the last month. But the ones who are going to turn out to be some of our allies are people who right now are MAGA, and they're going to start having doubts. And for everyone out there who have friends and family, Joan, I want them to know that I consider them allies of leaving MAGA as well, because the best way of influencing and persuading someone is from those whom they know and trust.
So don't try to get in knockdown dragouts over politics. Be respectful, be supportive, and hold out hope.
That's a great way of putting it. In fact, I'll add to it. any discussions about facts and policy don't work, right? We know that they don't work. And any discussion and conversation that, let's say there's even the implication of an insult that gets lobbed, we know that that doesn't work. In fact, one of the parts of my strategy that we put together, which people can get at that ebook on our site, is there's a role play question and answer, which is when someone who is not a Trump supporter goes to another who is and says, I want to understand your motivations for why you supported Trump. I don't think that I ever really gave you the time and respect of wanting to understand that. What people will discover is their Trump-supporting friend or close one will actually take the time to go over their motivations. And after that conversation, there's a flip side of it, which is the person who doesn't support Trump will then say to the supporter, okay, I understand your reasons. Do you understand why I have reasons opposing Trump? And I promise you, Joan, that that person who supports Trump has never had that kind of conversation before. But the challenge of doing this and the onus of this falls on the friends and family. And I know that friends and family don't want to hear that, right? I can understand. I can feel the eye rolls right now as people are listening to this saying, why do I need to be the one to do that? Why do I have to be? So I know it's a big ask, but the more it's done, the more that people are going to start to see some light through these dark clouds and are going to start to feel like they can get back their relationships that existed before Trump and MAGA came along. Because if there's anything that we know about politics, it's not permanent. And I do not believe that being in MAGA has to be permanent either.
Well, I really hope you're right. I really do. I would like to believe that that's possible. And I do know that we're seeing more and more of that. You know, like I said, you know, Katie Britt gave that response to Joe Biden, and now Katie Britt, the junior senator from Alabama, is kind of going like, well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What do you mean, you know, cuts to the National Institutes of Health? I think even for a lot of elected officials, what is going on is a bit of a shock to the system. And, you know, I think that how was it? Stephen Colbert from The Late Show put it, that people didn't like Trump in his first term, but they forgot that they didn't like Trump, and now they're going to have to relearn it. Would you say that there's some truth in that, Rich?
Yeah, I think we just, as a species, we have short memories. We tend to be prisoners of nostalgia also. And my beliefs, I think there are two primary reasons why we lost in November. One is that mis and disinformation. Mm-hmm. I think it's at a level of a national crisis. And even though I'm not going to say that the MAGA community is the only information siloed group, it is the most information siloed group in America. I can say that with confidence, having been in that community for 7 years. Second reason is I think there is a misunderstanding in the country about what capitalism really is, and a lack of understanding of what our system of government and our model of commerce and free markets is. But that's a conversation for a different time if you'll have me back on. I had a piece published in Salon recently about that, about the misunderstanding of capitalism. So there are a lot of Americans who are going to discover that what they thought Trump may not do, he's doing, and then there's going to be a lot who are going to discover that he's doing something that they had no idea because of the information silos that they're in. And when they have that realization, let's show them the exit and the off-ramp. I can say proudly as a testament to our team and not me that we have data, Joan, that every single month since we have existed as an organization for a year, every single month more and more Americans are learning about us. And the more people learn about us, the safer of a place it's going to be for people in MAGA who start to have doubts to come join us at our community. Free of judgment, free of ostracization.
Rich, I love the work you're doing, and I thank you so much for joining us and talking about it. Thank you again.
It's my pleasure, Joan. Happy to always be with you. Thank you.
Rich Logis, founder of Leaving MAGA. Get the booklet he's talking about and, get in good information on the website, leavingmaga.org. We're going to take a break for news and be back right after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We were just talking with Rich Logis, who used to be a very strong MAGA supporter. And as he said, part of his departure process started with Ron DeSantis, when Ron DeSantis during COVID had like a very anti-vaccine kind of stance. And that was the beginning of the end for Rich. Ron DeSantis is still the governor in Florida. Thought maybe it would be a good time to check in to see what's going on in that most lively state. Anders Croy is the communications director at Florida Watch and joins us once again. Anders, how are you?
Hey, good afternoon, Joan. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
For a Monday, I'm doing remarkably well, Anders. And that's about all you can ask for on a Monday. Ron DeSantis, bring us up to speed. How is the lovely governor of Florida?
Well, it's been a pretty eventful few weeks down here in the Sunshine State, Joan. Our governor has been at loggerheads with the state legislature. Now, if you know anything about Florida and what's been happening here over the last 6+ years, this governor has relied on bluster, bullying, and political stunts to push his extreme agenda of higher costs and fewer freedoms for working families and seniors in our state. And he has done that with the help of a compliant Florida legislature who has bowed to every single whim he's ever asked of them. Essentially, when he has said jump, they have said how high. Well, we have a new Florida Senate president and a new Speaker of the House now, and last month the governor wanted to have a special session on immigration here in the state. He put forward a series of proposals. The new Speaker and the president told him that they thought it was premature, that he was only putting forward fragments of a plan when it came to immigration. And when they came to Tallahassee, because they were constitutionally required to do so, they ended his special session and started their own, and had their own immigration bill that they put forward that would have stripped a lot of powers from Florida's governor and put immigration enforcement in the state in charge under Wilton Simpson, who's the agriculture commissioner here and a political rival of the governor dating back to Agriculture Commissioner Simpson's time as the Senate president. Now, this led to a bit of a civil war here in Florida. There has been a lot of online threats, which have been egged on by the governor's taxpayer-paid communication staff against legislators who went against his agenda on this. But last week, they came together in a sort of a fake kumbaya moment and passed a new immigration proposal that was negotiated behind closed doors. It was passed in 2 days here in the state with really no input from Floridians. And now we're going to have to deal with the consequences of that. But what we do have is a weakened governor politically here in Florida.
Okay, this group that seems to be thwarting, rising up against Ron DeSantis. Walk me through this again. Ron DeSantis's immigration proposals, did they want something? Did they think that they were unfair, inappropriate, not tough enough? In other words, are they out MAGA-ing Ron, or do they think Ron has gone too far?
That's essentially what happened here. What we really saw was a legislature that's trying to assert a little bit of independence again. Going back in Florida, the legislature and the governor have always sort of been a little bit adversarial. You know, the legislature has had their priorities, the governor's had his. So a lot of people saw this as the legislature trying to say, hey, we're our own body again. But also it was what you said. It's trying to see who can be the most subservient to President Donald Trump. The legislature actually even named their bill the Trump Act because subtlety is something that is at a loss here in the state of Florida. And there was back and forth between the governor, between the legislature over who was actually talking to the Trump administration the most about what was going to be in these proposals. But at the end of the day, let's be clear about what these proposals are. They are bad for the state of Florida. They are proposals that will one of the main key points of these proposals is to repeal in-state tuition for Dreamers here in Florida. These are kids who were brought here by no choice of their own, who are trying to better their lives and live their own version of the American dream, who are having a promise, the rug pulled out from under them while they are in college right now and will no longer be paying in-state tuition to go to school. There are also some really bad policies in here that would make entering the state a crime. That is the realm of the federal government. This will lead to folks who have not committed any additional crimes being arrested, potentially racial profiling, and the separation of families. So this is a bad bill overall that they ended up coming up with, but they did take away some of the governor's powers. Your listeners and you may remember the stunts that the governor pulled a couple years ago where he sent migrants from Texas to Martha's Vineyard and then to Sacramento, California. They have ended that program now. The governor has to ask for the federal government's permission if he wants to move any migrants anywhere in the country. And instead of giving him sole power over immigration enforcement in the state, they've now made it a four-person body made up of the state's cabinet, which includes the governor, the attorney general, our CFO, as well as the agriculture commissioner, who have to have unanimous consent to do any sort of immigration-related policy now.
So if he's got rebellion on his hands from the legislature, what does this say about his about his future? I mean, you know, it seemed like when Donald Trump was elected that there was the possibility of some kind of détente between the two of them, which may or may not have rested on Laura Trump being the new Marco Rubio. I'm not really sure. I mean, there was talk that if Hegseth got kicked to the curb, maybe Ron DeSantis would be the next person put up to head the DOD. And yet those overtures, shall we call them, seem to have come to nothing. How would you assess Ron DeSantis's relationship with Donald Trump right now?
I'd say what we have right now in Florida is a lame duck governor who is grasping for any bit of political relevancy he can find. I can't speak to personally what the governor's relationship is with the president. I can say that the president did not chime in support of the governor throughout all of this infighting with the Florida legislature. But what we're seeing right now is that Ron DeSantis is spending his waning time in office essentially powdering his face for TV hits and trying out new podcast mics, while Floridians are just desperate for leadership that will address the real issues facing the people of our state. But it's just a parade of political stunts over and over and over again because this governor, all he knows how to do is to try to look tough. He doesn't actually know how to do his job. He doesn't know how to lower costs, how to raise wages, how to make our state safer and more vibrant for everyone who lives here. So what you're seeing is sort of a public game of trying to suck up to the president as much as he possibly can in order to rebuild that political foundation that was destroyed by his disastrous run for president. When everyone saw what we've seen here in Florida for many years now, which is an unlikable bully who was trying to win over a portion of the electorate with a Florida blueprint that really just would have meant higher costs and less freedoms for the rest of the country.
Wow. I remember when DeSantis first came on the national scene, I personally didn't agree with this, but I remember seeing articles comparing he and his wife and their young family to sort of like a new Kennedy, a new Camelot. Boy, that sure went away fast.
And I think part of what's happened the last couple of weeks has shown just how desperate the governor is to stay politically relevant. There was a report from NBC News that they are floating his wife as a potential gubernatorial candidate now. This came after the governor.
Because he's term limited out.
Yeah, he's term limited out in 2026, and there's a lot of sort of speculation that who the front runner is going to be whoever the president chimes in on. Now, the governor had tried to insert himself into that process a little bit by saying his political committee is going to be supporting a strong conservative gubernatorial candidate, as well as potentially primarying these members of the legislature who have gone against him on these issues. But I think that should be seen for what it really is, which is just a flailing for relevancy when it's becoming clear that this is a lame duck that folks are pretty much sick of at this point and just waiting for him to term out of office so that the state of Florida can get back to hopefully trying to solve the real issues impacting the people here and not have a state government that's subservient to the ego of Ron DeSantis.
Wow. Anders, we need to take a break. I'm talking to Anders Croy, Communications Director at Florida Watch. Things are really getting interesting there. We'll be back with more after this. If you are a financial planner, a CPA, a divorce attorney, or you know what, a listener, if you'd like to finance a new home, refinance the home you've got now, you might be wondering why your mortgage professional isn't returning your calls. They may not be in the business anymore. Team Hochberg says 165,000 mortgage professionals did not renew their licenses in the last couple years. So why don't you think about doing what I did and call Team Hochberg? Team Hochberg has been adding loan officers. They're stronger than ever, and they'd love to earn your business. So let's take a look at the situation for the last couple years. 165,000 mortgage professionals did not renew their license. So if you want to finance or refinance, call Team Hochberg. They are stronger than ever. 855-563-2843 or go online 56david.com. That number again, 855-563-2843 or go online 56david.com. Lower.com equal housing lender, NMLS 1124061.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Anders Croy is on the line with me to talk about Florida. He's the communications director at Florida Watch. We have been talking about the political demise of Ron DeSantis. Anders, you said that there's talk that Ron DeSantis might get behind his wife as running for governor in the next term. Is that more than just a rumor? And how do you think the people of Florida would feel about that?
Well, it's just a rumor right now, and it's one of those things that was reported recently. It's been sort of a Tallahassee rumor for a long time now. I don't know how real that is or how much it's what I was saying earlier. It's the governor just trying to cling to a little bit of relevancy here as he enters this lame duck period and trying to keep a little bit of that power that he has had over the last 6+ years. There's going to be a pretty spirited Republican primary for governor here in the state. Byron Donalds received, I believe, a pretty supportive tweet today from the president talking about some poll numbers that have been released recently. He's a congressman from down in the Naples area who has been a very strong ally of President Trump. He has been rumored to run and has been gearing up for that. As I mentioned earlier, the Agriculture Commissioner, Wilton Simpson, has also been somebody who has raised money in the past. During the last election, hosted the now vice president down here for a few events, has been pretty close with Susie Wiles, who is now the president's chief of staff. And then we have Matt Gaetz, our failed attorney general candidate, who is still floating around here in the state. And knowing Florida and how things go here, somebody that we're not even thinking of probably will jump into this race as well. But I think the thought process among a lot of people, among Republicans especially now, is that it's the president who is the kingmaker in Florida politics, and it's not Ron DeSantis. And the reason you're seeing him lash out, the reason you're seeing him throw these sort of political temper tantrums here in the first couple months of this year is that he knows he's losing that grip that he's had, and they're trying to do whatever they can to try to make it seem like he is still the incredibly powerful figure he had been over the last few years here in the state.
Interesting. When Susie Wiles first got into the spotlight with this Trump campaign, and I've been reading some articles about it, she and Ron DeSantis not really on the same page. Correct me if I'm wrong, but she was a big campaign person in Republican circles, and then the way I read the story, and I don't know if it was New York Magazine or whatever, she went to work for Ron DeSantis, and for some reason, which I'm not quite clear on, there was apparently a big falling out. And then not only did Ron DeSantis, the way I read it, not want to work with her anymore, but supposedly he actually started trying to get other Republicans to basically, he tried to blackball her, tried to get other Republicans to never hire her again. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of love lost there. What can you tell me about that relationship?
There is a lot of bad blood there. For folks who don't know, Susie Wiles is a longtime Florida operative. She really sort of rose to fame outside of the state when she helped Rick Scott in his gubernatorial run back in 2010, which came out of nowhere and defeated a more establishment Republican candidate in the primary and then the Democrat in the general. She helped President Trump win the state in 2016. And then, as you mentioned, she was brought in the last months of the 2018 gubernatorial campaign to right the ship for Ron DeSantis in what was at the time considered to be a sort of campaign that was sinking following the primary that year, and the governor immediately making some very regrettable comments that many viewed as racist as soon as the primary was over. Now, the governor won by a very close margin that year. A lot of that credit went to Susie Wiles. The governor and his team did not like that. They ended up forcing her out. The rumor at the time was that they believed she had leaked some fundraising documents to the Tampa Bay Times that showed that the governor was essentially auctioning off his time on the golf course to potential donors for multiple thousands of dollars at a time. And after that, they did. The governor's team had her fired from her lobbying job here in the state, tried to blackball her. President Trump brought her back in 2020 as the state director here, and then brought her further into his political campaign in 2021 and into the presidential primary process. A lot of the hits that you saw on Ron DeSantis from President Trump's team during that Republican primary believed here in the state to have been orchestrated by Susie Wiles. This is a woman who does not have much of a public persona, but when she dropped out of the presidential campaign, she tweeted for the first time in about a year a simple bye-bye at the time. So I think there is definitely no love lost between the president's chief of staff and the governor of Florida, and I'm not sure there's been a lot of work done on either side to rebuild that relationship.
Wow. And you mentioned Matt Gaetz. Do the people of Florida like him any better than his congressional colleagues who, by all accounts, despised him?
I think there's been some statewide polling that is not as good for Matt as the election results were in his congressional district. You know, that being said, this is Florida, and anything can happen in a Republican presidential primary. I think the stories that you've seen about former Congressman Gaetz are the type of things that used to end anybody's political career. But in the new Trump-dominated world that is Republican primary politics, I can't say for sure what the Republican electorate here in the state will do if there is that choice, and the president has not weighed in when it comes August of 2026 here.
Yeah. I believe that you've got some special elections coming up. I know this only because I keep getting emails and posts on social media asking me to contribute to the Democrats who are running in some of these elections. Do any of them have any chance?
Well, you mentioned Congressman Gaetz. He did vacate his seat and resign from Congress. That is a pretty red district over in Florida's Panhandle. But there is a good Democrat running there who has run a couple times in the past, I think her name is Gay Valamont, who is going to give the Republican nominee there, who's a man named Jimmy Petronas. I mentioned our state CFO earlier. That currently is Jimmy Petronas. He has his office oversees the Office of Insurance Regulation here in Florida. And during the time that he has overseen insurance in the state, it has now gone up by almost 200%. Floridians are paying almost 5 times the national average, and that is a huge issue, especially in the coastal areas of that district. Now, the other seat that's up is being vacated by Congressman Mike Waltz, who is now the national security advisor for the new president. There is a Democrat there, I believe Josh Weil, who is running a spirited campaign against Randy Fine, who is currently a state senator, former state representative. He's a guy who has underperformed Republican performance in his district in the past. He's not well liked by his colleagues here in Tallahassee. He does have an endorsement from the president. But I think what you're seeing is that there is a energy here in the state of Florida. We've talked about this in the past. You know, Democrats are ready to fight. I think folks at every level of the state are asking for more from both their state and federal elected officials. And I'm not going to play pundit on these districts except to say that I think folks are running hard, and, you know, anything can happen in an election, and especially a special election, which we've seen Democrats overperform in here in Florida and across the country over the last few years.
Well, I would imagine, though, that Republicans are going to pour a lot of money into these races, wouldn't you, since their hold on Congress is razor thin?
It is, and they have been spending a lot of money. I know, I believe Jimmy Patronis has raised more than $1 million just for the special election primary there. Randy Fine has also been raising a lot of money. So, you know, these folks need support. And I think Republicans nationwide are looking at the map. I think I read a report in the last couple of days that they are sort of slow walking the Elise Stefanik UN ambassador role nomination because they are so worried about how razor thin that majority is. So it just goes to show they're not taking these seats for granted, and I don't think anybody else should either. When you have good people who are running really, really hard races, when they're out there talking to voters and they're trying to listen to those real concerns, not just trying to get an endorsement and see how close to the president you can be, which the Republican candidates have made the centerpieces of their campaigns, that this is an interesting time in our country, and anything can happen when folks go to the polls.
Yeah. I saw a sound clip not too long ago from a South Florida television station, a Venezuelan woman talking about how she felt that their community had been lied to and betrayed by Republicans because they were promised that the documented immigrants from the Venezuelan community who had temporary protected status, Donald Trump decided to announce that he was not going to go along with that. That was going to be revoked. And she was quite angry. She was like, you know, Republicans told us we would be safe, and we were lied to. Do you think those kinds of interviews are going to have an impact?
I think the TPS issue is a huge one here in the state of Florida. Florida has more than 200,000 Venezuelans who are currently accessing the TPS program. Even the Miami-Dade Commission, which is now a majority Republican commission, put forward a resolution asking the president to hold off on this and to make sure that these people are taken care of. You know, the folks in South Florida especially, which has turned more red the last couple of years, they weren't asking for people who are here working hard and trying to build their version of the American dream after fleeing authoritarianism in their home countries to be sent back home. They were asking for someone who's going to focus on the issues that are important, especially in South Florida, which is the high cost of living, whether that's groceries, whether that's housing, whether that's property insurance. I don't think this does that. And I think the folks down there especially are starting to wonder, maybe did I make a mistake? Maybe the president isn't actually focused on the things that I thought he would be focused on. But this is certainly a huge issue here in the state of Florida. And I know folks are trying to make as much noise as possible about this problem.
Anders, it's always so much fun to talk to you. Thank you for being here. Really a pleasure.
Joan, I always enjoy it. Thank you so much for having me.
Anders Croy is the communications director at Florida Watch, and Florida is a state we will be watching. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We like to talk about Democratic politics. We like to talk about what's going on in this country. And we like to talk about the future, what we can do, how we can do it, and how we can bring sanity back into our lives. There is a newsletter called Fenn Daily you might want to look into. It's FENNDAILY, written by Peter Fenn, who is a Democratic political strategist. Peter joins us now. Peter, how are you today?
Well, I'm surviving. I guess we're all surviving, Joan. I think you've got the right take on this. I think it is all about how we can turn this craziness around. And I think that a lot of people, they seem to want to keep the covers over their heads here for a while. But that clearly isn't the way we should behave in the coming months and weeks and months, really days and weeks and months, since everything is happening so fast.
I have been talking with different people and getting their take on how we move forward. Because, after Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton, that was just, it was complete and utter shock. And it felt like somehow a mistake had been made, that we didn't really mean to do that. Somehow it happened by accident. And this time around, it seemed like too many people in this country made the choice to bring back the cruelty, the illegality and all that. And this time feels different. And I understand what you're saying about wanting to just go to bed and pull the covers up over your head. I mean, I was telling the audience earlier today that I read right after Trump was elected, there was one cruise line that offered a 4-year cruise. It's basically get on the boat, and then when you get off the boat 4 years later, you have maybe avoided the worst of it. What advice do you have for those of us who, on the one hand, we want to resist, on the other hand, we're kind of sick to our stomachs, and we wonder who our fellow Americans are? Speak to us, Peter. Speak to us.
Well, I wish I was such a genius that I could lay out a wonderful work plan, Joan. But I did write a piece in the middle of January. In fact, as I was looking forward to Martin Luther King Day, not so much Inauguration Day, and I just titled it "Where do Democrats Go from Here?" And I sort of tried to lay out some things, and I did it on the basis, Joan, I was chief of staff for a guy named Frank Church, who was a senator from Idaho for many years and helped run his campaign in 1980. And I'll tell you, 1980 was horrendous. We got blown out, as you may remember. And the thing is that a woman named Pamela Harriman and her husband Averill Harriman started something way back then called Democrats for the 80s. And I learned some lessons from running that organization. And one of them was, as I say in my article, keep away from the latest shiny object, right? Mm-hmm. Don't react to every single simple thing that you hate. Now, here in Washington, do we think that the Kennedy Center nonsense that's going on is horrible? Yeah, we do. But that's not what people are spending a lot of time thinking about. And so that was the first thing. And the second thing with what's happening now is if you're given money, give it to the lawyers. Give it to the ACLU. Give it to the legal groups that are bringing these court cases, over 50 of them now, all over the country. Support that effort, because we've got to win a good portion of these court cases, and we've got to do it fast. The other thing I think that's important is I think we have to really organize at the grassroots, at the local levels, in the states. Sure, do we have to take the House back in 2 years? That is, that's job number one. We need the House of Representatives back. So, that's going to be a big effort. People are crying in their beer now. Oh, people aren't giving to Democrats right now, blah, blah, blah. Well, they're taking a breather. And if they're not giving to Democrats, give the money to the lawyers. So that seems to me the basic, tactical stuff. But more important, and I'm going to use some colorful language here, if you're the top 1%, you're going to make out like a bandit. You're going to do great, because this tax cut is you just are going to take that sucker all the way to the bank. If you aren't in the top 1%, 5% in this country, if you're a working person, what Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing is screwing you. They are really screwing you. And if you have kids in Head Start and they're going to gut Head Start, if you happen to be one of the over 40 million people who gets SNAP, food stamps, they're going to take it. They're going to go right at you. If you're one of the 70 million people who needs Medicaid to pay for your health care, you know, the latest idea of these characters is to cut $1.5 trillion from the budget. Well, you know, they're going to at least knock off 20 million people who are on Medicaid. Well, if you look at those folks that voted and supported Donald Trump because they wanted change, because they didn't want normal, because they didn't like Joe Biden, because they'd been told the government was corrupt, wait just 1 minute, because what's going to happen? You're going to get screwed.
Yeah. I think we are in the process of seeing that, like the train coming at us from the other end of the tunnel. Peter, you made reference to something that you wrote recently. In your latest newsletter that I saw, you wrote about, is America going the way of Hungary? There have been so many people talking about Viktor Orban and how he took Hungary from at least a fledgling democracy to a democracy that really serves only him. First of all, I want to talk to you about this, but first, talk about Hungary and what happened there. Give us a basis.
Yeah, this is so fascinating, Joan, because I've watched this very carefully. Way back in 1990, as a young guy, I went over there to help the political parties in Hungary after the wall fell, after the Soviet Union came down. And I'll tell you, Viktor Orban and the group of young 30-somethings that formed Fidesz, which now, of course, is the ruling party, these folks were pro-democracy. They were members of the Liberal International. They were open. Viktor Orban had gone to Oxford University, and he had interned with George Soros and his Open Society Foundation. These people were, you know, there was a group of them, and we worked with them. You know, we drank beer with them. And I just watched in the 90s as a lot of them peeled off of Orban. Orban started taking a hard turn to the right. And then, you know, he served one term. He kind of like Trump learned his lesson, supposedly, or his bad lesson. And then he came back, and in 2010, he turned this country into an authoritarian, basically a dictatorship. He changed the legal system and judiciary. He took over all means of the media, so that if you were, if you're Joan Esposito on the radio, you weren't going to last very long because he was going to pull a plug on you. And he did it. And then, he controlled the election system. And this is the hero for the Heritage Foundation. This is the model for Project 2025. This is exactly what my old sparring partners on CNN, who I thought were just ordinary conservatives like Tucker Carlson, they love them. They absolutely love them. And, this is their model. And you can see it with almost everything that they've done this last month. So that's, to be honest, that scared the heck out of me to watch this country be turned into they call it now illiberal. Well, it's illiberal, all right. So
did something
scary.
happen to Viktor Orban? How does somebody go from being so pro-democracy to being so not? How does it happen? Was there a traumatic event? Did he get hit on the head?
Well, I think, I haven't talked to his psychologist lately, but, my guess on this is he saw a way to keep power. He saw a way to manipulate government rather than, run it. in a normal democratic way. And once he's a charismatic guy, Joan. I mean, he really is. This guy is not stupid, and he was able, initially with some coalitions with some others, to solidify his control. And he's been he had 4 years first, and he's been in there for 15 years, and he's the leader for life. And that's precisely the thing. I mean, Trump's going to have a little age problem, as we already know he has. I mean, he's losing it. But anybody who thinks that even Donald Trump is going to go quietly into the good night in 4 years, I'd be a little careful thinking through that. And especially if we have a constitutional crisis, and especially if the courts don't, if Trump had won in 2020, think of the judges that he would have appointed during those 4 years. And that, at least now, we control. Well, control is a bad word. I don't like that, because judges aren't controlled by the person that appointed them necessarily. But over 60% of the judges that were appointed by Democratic presidents, the federal district judges, but he controls the courts. The courts are in the palm of Viktor Orban's hands right now. But we're supposed to obey a constitution. He changed his constitution over there. What? I mean, are they going to get rid of the 14th Amendment when it comes to birthright citizenship? That seems to be the plan. And if and even if courts rule against him, will he abide by the court rulings?
Well, that's the one that keeps me up at night. We have to take a break, Peter. I want to when we come back. I understand why Donald Trump would want to be the next Viktor Orban, but I don't quite understand what is in it for Elon Musk. I want to analyze that relationship a little bit when we come back. Peter Fenn is a Democratic political strategist. He writes a newsletter, Fenn Daily. We will be right back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Go on your computer and type in fenndaily.com, F-E-N-N, fenndaily.com, and you can have all of the essays that Democratic strategist Peter Fenn is posting. The most recent one talking about how Trump wants to be the next Viktor Orban, and seems to, with the help of the Federalist Society and Project 2025, to have a blueprint for how to make that happen. But we have this shadow president, sub-president, caretaker. I don't know what exactly he is. That would seem like a better caretaker would be a better title than any other I've heard for him. What is the world's richest man getting out of playing with government? What is it? What makes Elon want to do this?
Well, Joan, I'll tell you, I think he thinks he is the world's smartest man as well as the world's richest man. And he knows absolutely nothing about government, which is very clear from what he's been engaging in with his 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 22-years-olds that are
the flying monkeys. We call them the flying monkeys here.
The flying monkeys. They are the flying monkeys, aren't they? I mean, this is scary as all get out. Maybe they may be good at their computer screens, but they don't. They start off with AID because it was that's the low-hanging fruit. Who likes foreign aid, right? And they had no idea what they're doing. No. But Donald Trump loves money and he loves power, and Musk, for the time being, is his BFF. And I think Musk for both Musk and Trump, there's not enough money for them. I mean, we're going to see Trump, who's the ultimate grifter. He's playing this, and so is Trump. So is Musk. I mean, I think that that's part of it. But I think that he thinks that he can totally turn around America by blowing up government. I think that he really believes that he is so smart that he's going to put all these agencies, as he says, into the wood chipper. I mean, there used to be a phrase during the Vietnam War that we need to destroy the village in order to save it. Mm-hmm. That is precisely what these folks believe. That's what Steve Bannon believes. Blow it up. Blow it up.
I would take those theories more seriously if it wasn't a bunch of rich white guys who seem to be pushing this. Steve Bannon used to be one of Trump's richer friends, but now he's been eclipsed by all the other rich white guys who I honestly believe they look at Trump as a useful idiot. I mean, Elon may have spent $227 million to get Trump elected, but he has already reaped billions privately and professionally. I mean, he's supposed to be looking for government waste when he himself and his companies have government contracts. How does that work? And why in the defense budget is there now a $400 million line item to buy Cybertrucks? Where did that come from?
Absolutely correct. Why is he slowing down NASA? NASA, they plan out these launches years in advance. Mm-hmm. He shut that stuff down. Where do you think these government contracts are going to continue to go? Not to NASA. They're going to go to him or through NASA. When he talks about how he's going to, the FAA cuts, okay, so he wants to take over our air traffic control system? Really? I'm not flying in any planes with him back there, let me tell you. And I think that there's an ideological piece to this, obviously, but I think these guys are drunk with power. I mean, it's Lord Acton. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's basically the direction that these folks are heading, in my view. And this is the thing, I think, it can't happen here, right? Oh, gee, we're a democratic country. We have a constitution. We have a history. We're about to celebrate 250 years. We're fine. Well, a lot of people who have been analyzing, the destruction of democracies say, hey, Adolf Hitler got elected, Mm-hmm. Hey, Viktor Orban got elected, And this is not one of those things it's not a military coup that starts it off. And he's good, but and the folks, I think the scariest thing, Joan, not to get into this in too much detail, but every former members of Congress that I talk to, even current members, local party officials, people who, like you, are out there fighting the good fight, they're getting the threats. They're getting the phone calls. They're getting, judges that I know that are working on these cases, they have to have federal marshals with them 24/7. And a lot of it's just, it's nothing. I mean, it's just people, making phone calls and being stupid. But, some of it, when you pardon that group that took over the Capitol, mm-hmm. including the ones who were the most violent, yep. who still profess violence, this is serious.
And, he said he was going to pardon those people while he was campaigning, and yet he still got the endorsement of a lot of fraternal order of police unions across the country. Of course, when he actually did it, the national FOP was like, oh, we condemn this. This is wrong.
Right,
and it was
right.
like, dudes, were you not listening?
Right,
did you not understand? We should have learned the first time, no matter how outrageous or offensive something he says is, it doesn't mean he's just being hyperbolic. He's telling you what he's going to do.
Absolutely. You take him literally.
Yep.
And you take him seriously. And I think that the last events of the last month show that to people. And here's my theory. They say flood the zone, right? Steve Bannon, that's his thing, flood the zone. They're flooding the zone, all right. And in 6 months or a year, it's already starting, but in 6 months and a year, people are going to say, hey, wait, I kind of wanted not normal. I'm getting not normal bad. Not normal good. And I think once, as I said, once their Head Start, the kids don't have Head Start, once you have to deal with daycare expenses, once you have to see your food stamps.
Well, how about the Kansas farmers? Kansas, a red state. Oh, wait a minute. USAID buys our crops. Wait a minute. And then now the legislators from Kansas, do you see what they're trying to do? The portion of USAID that buys the crops of Kansas farmers, they're trying to actually carve that out and put it under the agriculture department so they can keep the Kansas farmers afloat.
Well, really, the last time that he was screwing around with his tariffs and everything else, and farmers were getting hit hard, he passed a $28 billion aid package for farmers, American farmers.
He ended up spending more money than he ever got back in any of his tariffs. The evidence was there, Peter. The evidence was there with the blueprint. We knew who this guy was. That's, I think, why people are having a hard time. We're learning these lessons all over again.
This is our problem, Joan. I mean, if we do not say to folks, you see this tax cut? They did it to you. In the first Trump administration, they're doing it to you again. And, they knew. They didn't want to talk about the tax cut in 2018. They knew it was bad news. Now, not only is it going to screw you, but you're going to put a deficit together, which is unheard of. And in order to get any of that money back, they're going to have to cut Medicaid. They're going to have to cut all the programs to help you. And furthermore, you can't make it up with these stupid tariffs because you're going to. I mean, now they're saying, okay, with a steel, the average person who's buying a dishwasher or a washing machine, or a car, it's going to cost you $1,100-1,200 more just to do that. And we've got to make the economic argument. And look, everybody knows that Trump's a jerk. Everybody knows that he's a grifter. Okay, I mean, we hit it a little bit, but it's what he's doing to you. Yep,
that's a message we have to get out. Peter, this has been a delightful conversation. Will you come back again? We need more time.
Well, I'd be glad to. Thank you, Joan, for having me. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Peter Fenn, you can find his musings at fenndaily.com. We are going to, was it .com? Yes, .com. Yep. That's it for me. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez is next. I'll see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Have a great evening, my friends, and good night.